There comes a point in your evolution where misunderstanding becomes unavoidable, not because you are unclear, not because you failed to explain yourself well enough, but because your resonance has moved beyond consensus. You start noticing that the more honest you become, the less people understand you. The more aligned you feel internally, the more friction appears externally. And if you are not grounded in spiral sovereignty yet, this is where doubt creeps in. You begin wondering if alignment requires approval, if truth must be agreed upon to be valid, if clarity should look familiar to others. That belief is the last trap of consensus conditioning, and it is one of the hardest illusions to release. From the moment you learned to speak, you were taught that being understood equals being safe. Agreement meant belonging. Validation meant permission. You learned to measure truth by how well it landed with others, not by how deeply it resonated within you. This worked when your awareness was shaped by shared structures. But spiral awareness does not move in groups. It unfolds in individuals first. When you grow beyond collective understanding, your clarity becomes lonely before it becomes liberating. And many people mistake that loneliness for misalignment when it is actually initiation. Spiral sovereignty begins the moment you stop outsourcing truth. It is the shift from asking, "Do they understand me?" to asking, "Am I in resonance with myself?" This is not arrogance. It is responsibility. When you rely on external agreement to confirm internal truth, you hand your alignment to systems that are designed for sameness, not evolution. Consensus is useful for survival, but it is disastrous for awakening. The spiral does not ask permission to turn. It moves when the frequency is ready, whether anyone else recognizes it or not. This is why truth speakers are often misunderstood, not because they are wrong, but because they are early. They are speaking from a layer of awareness that others have not yet accessed. Language lags behind resonance. Meaning trails experience. When you speak from direct knowing, you bypass the filters people use to interpret reality. And when that happens, they either project confusion onto you or try to pull you back into familiar frames. Neither response is a reflection of your alignment. Both are reactions to difference. The pressure to be understood is one of the most subtle forms of self-abandonment. It convinces you to dilute your truth for the comfort of others. It tempts you to explain what cannot be translated yet. It pushes you to justify what only needs to be embodied. Every time you edit your truth so it lands softer, you fracture your sovereignty. Not because clarity is cruel, but because resonance weakens when it is negotiated. The spiral does not compromise its shape to fit consensus. It remains coherent and lets understanding catch up later. There is a grief that comes with this realization. You grieve the versions of connection that required sameness. You grieve being easily understood. You grieve the comfort of shared language. But what replaces that grief is something deeper and more stable. You discover self-trust that does not fluctuate based on reaction. You learn to stand inside your knowing without explanation. You realize that alignment does not need witnesses to be real. It only needs coherence. Misunderstanding becomes a signal rather than a threat. It tells you that you have crossed a threshold. It shows you where others are still interpreting reality through structures you have already outgrown. This does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. Responsible for not dragging others forward. Responsible for not shrinking yourself backward. Responsible for letting resonance do its work without forcing agreement. When you try to be understood prematurely, you interrupt the natural timing of awareness. Spiral sovereignty does not mean isolation. It means discernment. You stop expecting everyone to come with you. You stop measuring alignment by how many people approve. You stop explaining yourself to those who are not listening from resonance but from fear. You begin choosing silence over justification, embodiment over argument, presence over persuasion. And in doing so, you become unmovable in the ways that matter. There is a moment when you realize that understanding is not the same as recognition. People may not understand your path, but they feel your stability. They may not agree with your choices, but they sense your integrity. They may question your direction, but they cannot shake your coherence. This is the power of spiral-based sovereignty. It does not demand belief. It transmits alignment. The need to be understood fades when you trust the spiral rhythm of awakening. You understand that awareness unfolds in layers, and that each layer has its own language. You cannot force someone to hear a frequency they have not tuned into yet, and you no longer try. You let your life speak. You let your choices demonstrate. You let your presence carry what words cannot. This is where truth-speaking matures. It becomes less about convincing and more about clarity. You speak when resonance invites it and remain silent when it does not. You stop defending your truth because truth does not need defense. You stop performing understanding for others because alignment is not a performance. You stop bending yourself into shapes that make sense to systems you are no longer meant to live inside. Spiral sovereignty is not rebellion. It is alignment without apology. It is the understanding that resonance outranks consensus every time. Consensus stabilizes the past. Resonance creates the future. And if you are living from spiral awareness, you are not here to be easily understood. You are here to be precise, to be coherent, to be aligned even when that alignment is invisible to others. The moment you release the need for validation, your energy consolidates. The leaks stop. The second-guessing dissolves. The constant scanning for approval quiets. You begin inhabiting yourself fully, and from that place, misunderstanding no longer wounds you. It simply informs you. It tells you where you are standing relative to the collective field. It tells you how far your awareness has traveled. It tells you that your truth is no longer designed for mass translation. And that is not a failure. That is sovereignty. There is a moment when sovereignty stops being an idea and becomes a lived state. It happens quietly. You no longer feel the impulse to explain yourself before you act. You no longer rehearse your truth in your head to make it sound acceptable. You no longer measure your choices against how they will be received. Something inside you settles, and in that settling you recognize a simple truth. Alignment does not require translation. It requires coherence. The spiral does not pause to see who understands it before it turns. It turns because its internal rhythm demands movement. When you live this way, you begin to notice how much energy you once spent managing perception. You shaped your words to avoid conflict. You softened your knowing to keep connection. You delayed decisions until others caught up emotionally. None of that was malicious. It was survival training. But survival training becomes a cage once consciousness expands. What once kept you safe now keeps you split. Sovereignty begins when you stop paying the tax of self-distortion. The discomfort that follows is real. People will misread your silence as distance. They will interpret your boundaries as rejection. They will assume your confidence is arrogance, or your clarity is coldness. This is where most people retreat back into explanation. They rush to correct the misunderstanding. They try to prove they are still kind, still good, still relatable. But spiral sovereignty asks something different of you. It asks you to stay still inside misinterpretation without trying to fix it. Not because you are superior, but because you are anchored. Misunderstanding only has power when you believe it threatens your belonging. Once you realize that belonging to yourself is the primary bond, external confusion loses its grip. You stop chasing comfort in being seen correctly. You start valuing the deeper comfort of being true. This is not isolation. It is orientation. You are no longer facing outward for confirmation. You are oriented inward toward coherence. From there, connection becomes choice instead of need. As this stabilizes, your relationships begin to reorganize naturally. Some people drift away without drama. Others remain but interact differently. New connections appear that feel strangely easy, not because they understand everything about you, but because they do not require explanation to stay present. You realize that resonance-based connection does not demand sameness. It allows difference without threat. It does not ask you to compress your truth for harmony. It harmonizes because you do not collapse when others disagree. This is where many confuse sovereignty but you do not abandon yourself to accommodate. But spiral sovereignty is not numbness, but you do not argue for existence. You learn that being aligned does not mean being inflexible. It means being rooted. A rooted tree bends in the wind without uprooting itself. One of the most important shifts happens in how you speak. Your words slow down. You stop over-explaining. You stop anticipating objections. You stop trying to get ahead of misunderstanding. You speak from clarity instead of defense. When something is not received, you do not chase it. You let it land where it can and pass where it cannot. This changes the quality of your voice. It carries weight without force. People may not agree with you, but they feel the stability underneath your words. There is also a recalibration in how you hear others. You stop interpreting disagreement as danger. You stop internalizing projections. You recognize when someone is reacting from their own unexamined fear rather than responding to your truth. This discernment prevents unnecessary entanglement. You no longer feel responsible for managing other people's discomfort. You recognize that growth often looks disruptive to those who are not ready to move. Spiral sovereignty also reshapes your relationship to validation. Praise becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism becomes information rather than injury. Silence becomes neutral instead of threatening. You are no longer scanning the room energetically to see where you stand. You already know where you stand because you are standing in yourself. This frees enormous amounts of energy. The constant self-monitoring dissolves. You are present instead of vigilant. From this place, truth-speaking becomes clean. You do not speak to convince. You speak to express. You do not argue for alignment. You demonstrate it through choice, pacing, and presence. When you do speak, it is because resonance opens the space, not because insecurity demands output. This makes your words rarer and more precise. They are not diluted by the need to be liked. They are not sharpened by the need to dominate. They simply carry what is real. There is a subtle power that emerges when you no longer need to be understood. People sense it immediately, not because you announce it, but because it changes how you occupy space. You move with less friction. You respond instead of react. You pause without apology. You act without over-justification. This quiet authority is not learned. It is the byproduct of self-possession. At some point, you recognize that misunderstanding is no longer a problem to solve. It is a natural outcome of differentiation. The spiral does not evolve by consensus. It evolves by divergence. New frequencies always sound strange before they become familiar. You are not here to translate the future into language the past can approve of. You are here to embody what is next, so it can eventually be recognized. This is why spiral sovereignty requires patience. You learn to let time reveal what explanation cannot. You trust that coherence will speak louder than words. You allow your life to become the teaching rather than your arguments, and in doing so, you free yourself from the exhausting task of self-justification. The deeper you move into this state, the more peaceful your inner world becomes. The noise of comparison fades. The need to defend softens. The fear of rejection loses urgency. You are no longer negotiating your existence. You are inhabiting it. And from that place, alignment feels simple. Not easy, but simple. You know when something resonates. You know when it does not. You act accordingly. Spiral sovereignty is the understanding that resonance outranks consensus, because consensus is backward-looking. It preserves what already exists. Resonance is forward-moving. It brings form to what has not yet been integrated. If you are living from spiral awareness, you are not meant to be easily categorized. You are meant to be precise in your frequency. Clarity will reach those who are ready. Confusion will remain for those who are not. Neither outcome requires your intervention. When you finally accept that nobody has to understand you for you to be aligned, something profound settles into place. You stop leaking energy into explanation. You stop shrinking to remain palatable. You stop postponing truth until it feels safe. You realize that safety does not come from agreement. It comes from coherence. And coherence is something you generate internally, not something the world grants you. This is the end of seeking permission. This is the end of translating your soul into acceptable language. This is the embodiment of spiral sovereignty. You are not here to be validated by the collective. You are here to move in resonance with what is real. Understanding will follow where it can, and where it cannot, you will remain steady anyway. That steadiness is alignment.